Newsflash. Bond drinks more whiskey than he does vodka. Well, in the books anyway. And given that the franchise has had several whiskey brands during the years, which is best? Time for another taste test on PCZ TV.
PCZ TV.
Full disclaimer, I could not find them all, which is just as well for my pocketbook. But today, I, and sommelier Andre Mack, Michael Jackson, and a whole bevy of whiskey reviewers on the World Wide Web and the YouTube will taste them all-ish. Now, are you still in disbelief about Bond drinking more whiskey than vodka? Well, feast your eyes on this chart about his literary consumption. Oh, and yes, I know, the title of the video. I do know that bourbon is a legally defined category of whiskey. I just like the alliteration with the name Bond. Bond's Bourbons. And for a detailed breakdown of all the booze in the Bond books, see these videos. Anyway, first up, let's get to some whiskey definitions.
If you love whiskey, here are the 8 popular whiskey categories that you should know. As Harvey Specter from Sooth would tell you, there's nothing that a Scotch on the rocks can't fix. Made exclusively in Scotland, with single malt and blended as its main subcategories, Scotch offers a range of flavors from smoky to smooth. While Scotland is famous for its single malts, countries like India, Ireland and Japan are also crafting exceptional single malts that have won accolades globally. Blended whiskey, which combines different grains, barrel types and whiskies from different distilleries, offering a complex flavor profile. Bourbon is a quintessentially American whiskey. Its sweet and rich flavor profile makes it a favorite whether you're sipping it neat or mixing in a classic cocktail. Irish whiskey, known for its smoothness with notes of honey, vanilla and citrus, it's a delightful choice for those who enjoy a milder whiskey experience. Rye whiskey, an American classic, it's perfect for those who enjoy a whiskey with a bit of a spicy kick, adding complexity to classic cocktails like the Manhattan. Japanese whiskey is inspired by Scottish technique. It's known for its precision and elegance, often featured in high-end whiskey collections. Canadian whiskey is often crafted with rye and corn, offering a lighter and sweeter profile. Which whiskey category are you most intrigued by? Let me know in the comments below and follow me for more whiskey insights. Cheers.
Oh wow, that's complicated. And no one seems to agree completely on it. Not typical. We'll operate on the roughly right method.
But wait! There's more!
Let's further complicate it because Fleming spells whiskey without the E. American and Irish liquor producers and copy editors tend to favor the spelling whiskey with an E, while the Scots, Canadians, and Japanese tend to omit the E. Make your own choice. Anyway, what did Bond drink in the books with no E? Starting off with Canadian whiskey, he drank Canadian Club in Dr. No. Then bourbon. A lot of bourbon. Now, according to the James Bond dossier website, this is because Fleming himself thought that bourbon was healthier than Scotch. What? Anyway, Bond drinks 2 subcategories of bourbon, Kentucky and Tennessee. Starting first with Kentucky bourbons, Walker's Deluxe and the Man with the Golden Gun, alas, now defunct. Old Grandad in Live and Let Die. I.W. Harper, alas, also now defunct. Then on to the Tennessee bourbons. Jack Daniels, actually twice, both in On Her Majesty's Secret Service and You Only Live Twice. Moving on to Irish whiskey, alas, a type unknown. This needs more study. And finally, on to Scotland and the Scotch blended whiskey, Haig Haig in Live and Let Die, and Black and White in Moonraker. Okay, now on to the movies. We start off with Japanese whiskey. Suntory White Label Japanese whiskey in You Only Live Twice and alas, no longer available. Then right over to Tennessee whiskey with Jim Beam in The Living Daylights, and Jack Daniels in Goldeneye. Note that this is the only brand in both the books and the movies. And on to single malts. Talisker 10 in The World Is Not Enough and Die Another Day, and a whole bunch of Macallans. And here, I'm indebted to JamesBondLifestyle.com explaining all the Macallans used in the movies. Bond drinks a 10-year-old in M's apartment. Bond drinks a 10-year-old Fine Oak. And of course, a waste of a good scotch famously drinks the 62 vintage in Skyfall. Now on to some macro observations. First observation, there's no basic rye whiskey at all. All the bourbons fall into either Tennessee or Kentucky. Second, of the 11 brands mentioned, 7 are still available. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for, the taste tests. But first, let's get an idea of how to taste whiskey from some experts.
Let's talk about how to taste whiskey like a pro, even if you are not a pro. So first of all, if someone hands you whiskey in a glass that looks like this, or anything fancier than a shot glass, do not shoot that glass of whiskey, because the person that handed it to you is 100% going to judge you if you do. So when you get a glass that looks like this, take a look at it, notice the color, check out the legs. Realize that the color and the legs have nothing to do with flavor or what you're going to get out of the whiskey. Then you want to smell the whiskey. So put your nose in the glass, leave your mouth open, breathe through your nose, and you will get the aromas from the whiskey. If you sniff through your nose with your mouth closed, it's going to obliterate your nostrils and it's going to make you almost cough. So don't do that. Not going to be enjoyable for you. Next thing you want to do is taste the whiskey. Taste it first, take a small sip, swallow as quickly as possible. That sip is a throwaway sip to acclimate your palate to what you are about to taste. So first sip, quick. Second sip, nice and slow. When you take that sip, let it coat your palate, then swallow, breathe out, and then notice the flavors that sit on your tongue. If the finish is long, if your mouth waters, if it dries your mouth out. And then basically, just say whatever comes to mind, because there are no wrong answers when tasting whiskey, only whether if you like it or you don't like it. So that is how you taste whiskey like a pro. Hope that helps. Stay tuned for the next one. Cheers, guys.
And now that it's settled, let's go to the taste tests. All right, let's start with the 51st state. That's a joke, Canada. Canada and Canadian Club. Wow. Okay, they only sell it in 5-gallon jugs. Look, I'm not about to buy that much Canadian whiskey.
So because it's going to be mixing...
Has the right notes and the right finish to be a good cocktail.
Yes.
I do not want to drink this straight.
Our survey said...
But the experts seem okay with it, so I'll defer to them. Next up, Japanese whiskey. Now I know what you're thinking. I mentioned it's no longer available, but Sir Sean Connery did some adverts for Japanese whiskey. Suntory Crystal. It's kind of fun, let's give it a watch.
時は流れない。それは積み重なる。サントリークレスト12年。
Next up, bourbons. Starting with Old Granddad.
There's a little bit of orange peel in there, maybe a little bit of like tobacco smoke or leather, and maybe a little bit of vanilla, but all of these are so mild, it's like struggling to even point those out. All right, let's have a sip. Cheers. Now the flavor comes off quite a bit better. This is way more robust. It does have that little bit of a sharpness from the alcohol, but it's very well balanced, so it doesn't taste like ethanol. It tastes like,
Tastes like bourbon. And as with Canadian Club, the experts seem okay with it. And then, starting with Jim Beam. Sir Sean did some adverts for them also. Tastes like bourbon, and the experts are okay with it. So there you go. Next up, Jack Daniels. Tastes like my drunken college nights.
Oh, did I get drunk? Who did I get drunk?
But I will mention that Calvin Dyson drinks Jack and Coke in some of his videos. So there's a James Bond connection. And if you don't watch his channel, you should, by the way. And wow, Whiskey Base is not a fan. They agree with me, and that's rare. Moving on to Scotch blended whiskeys. Haig Haig. Lovely bottle, by the way. I could not find this one anywhere.
This, however, is a fancier version of their Haig Gold, which is their budget blended scotch.
Okay.
This is a 15-year-old blended scotch, and in theory has whiskey from like Glenkinchie and Linkwood in it.
Candy sweet on that nose.
Oh yeah, almost apple juice, too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's really mild. And there's none of the musty malt notes and a lot of the sugar. It tastes like it smells.
Looking at the experts, the ratings are on the rise, hitting a new high. Next up, Black and White. And again, I could not find this in my area at all. Do they still import it?
It's not interesting, but it's, you know. Bananas. No smoke, no really engaging qualities of any sort, but I mean, hey, nose isn't everything. Right, so, let's taste it, let's try it. Oh! Well, that was unexpected. Parma violets and rice pudding. It's really rich and creamy. It's got a very thick mouthfeel. It's a little tobacco-y on the finish, quite floral, fairly sweet. Well, that was an unexpected surprise. Alright, cool, I'm here for it now.
It seems okay from the expert reviews. So, there you go. And finally, on to the single malts. Talisker. Now in the movie, The World Is Not Enough and Die Another Day, James Bond and M both partake.
The Talisker distillery is on the Isle of Skye, which is off the northwest coast of Scotland. It's connected by a bridge, and it's known for its historical medieval castles and its fishing villages and its rugged landscape. And the landscape will really matter when we're talking about the nosing and the tasting here. You're going to kind of get it. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about the distillery. So the distillery uses 5 stills. There's two wash stills and 3 spirit stills. And then they use worm tubs. Now, worm tubs are an interesting thing. I've talked about them a really, really long time ago on my Craigellachie video that I guess I'll put up there. Whichever side it's on, I always forget. So the idea with a worm tub is it is a coil of metal, usually copper, or it's pretty much always copper, that goes into a big vat of water. And now this is used to help condense the whiskey, you know, at the distillate after it's been evaporated. It's helped to condense that over time. And it gives a very distinctive flavor. And in fact, about 1/3 of the top producing whiskeys in Scotland use worm tubs. But a lot of them don't, because they're extremely hard to maintain. It's a nightmare to maintain, but it does give a very full-bodied flavor to your whiskey. And so it's worth it, at least for those who want to do it. Now this Talisker 10, we're going to go and do our nosing and our tasting right now. So let's go ahead and do that. Now this whiskey is matured in American oak casks. It is also peated to a phenol level of about 18 to 20, 22, somewhere in there. And it is has this interesting fact where it says that the spring that actually feeds the distillery, as far as the water, fresh water source goes, runs over some peat. Now, I have to imagine a lot of Scottish distilleries have this same situation, but they pointed it out specifically, so I thought I would tell you. This is 45.8% ABV. It is chill filtered, and it is caramel color added, which, you know, take of that what you will. If you don't know what those things are, I'll probably do a video on them fairly soon. I did one on chill filtering, which I'll put up in the thing. I don't think I ever really did one on coloring, but essentially you can color your whiskey so that if, you know, everything kind of looks uniform, right? And chill filtering helps you to avoid any sort of clarity issues when you add water or, you know, chill it in any way. So, I guess I just told you. Anyway, let's go ahead and nose and taste here. So I do like the smell of this one. Here's the interesting thing though. I'll get a couple of things out of the way and then we'll talk a little bit more. When you smell this, you are almost entirely smelling the ocean. It's a heavy, like, if you go to the ocean and you inhale through your nose, you're not going to smell it. When I say this smells like the ocean, I'm talking about salt air mixed with, in this case, kind of a seaweedy, very salty, really, air. But there's also that light peat. Okay. 45.8%. You feel the alcohol a little bit. Here's what you're tasting immediately. Band-Aids for sure. Iodine for sure. Then you're going into the smoke. The peated has a different taste on your mouth in this one than it does in the nose. There's times where you'll taste whiskey and you will say, in fact, like, you know, this tastes like licking a charred log. This is not this way. What you're tasting here is mostly oily hints of that peat, but there's a lot of salt going on as well. Now the oiliness here, if you remember, I said was from the worm tubs, and that comes across. This is almost a perfect example of what a worm tub can do to a whiskey. I just love when I enjoy one of the whiskeys that I'm doing here. So the taste here overall is very pleasant. Actually, I guess I'll go into the overall. The taste here is very pleasant. This is the kind of bottle that you could have on your shelf all the time, and in fact, I'll just kind of get away with that. I'm going to give this a stock it.
And we have a solid showing for this single malt. Last, and certainly not least, is the Macallan. Well, why the Macallan?
We like to have relationships with companies that are family businesses. They care about it. It's not just a business.
So it comes as no surprise that it is in multiple movies.
You should try it sometime.
We see M, Bond, and Silva all drink in Skyfall.
And a particular favorite of yours, I understand?
Well, the problem is that Macallan has discontinued the 10-year-old in favor of the 12-year-old, so no exact match is possible. Now, I made a sacrifice and went out and got a 12-year-old of both the sherry and the double cask.
They're pretty similar.
Oh, they're definitely similar. I lean toward the standard Macallan 12. Fruitier, sweeter. I love my caramel notes. Mm-hmm. I'm not, some of you know this, I'm not as big on the oak flavors, and I believe I get more oak taste from this double cask.
Yes.
And so I lean definitely here.
I think a little bit of the American oak, you know, that vanilla and caramel, cinnamon, a little bit of that is in there with the Macallan double casking. Not much.
It's got a little bit of spice.
Subtleties.
You know? Right.
What were we drinking last night?
We were drinking the double cask. American oak and the European oak. They blend them together and they give you this double cask. Fantastic drink.
Okay, the ranking. Is it obvious that I have a bias towards single malts? But what do the experts say? Oh, yes. They agree, the single malts win. And as for the 1962, well, that costs more than my car. But I do have two 25 Macallans. So if you add them together, does that equal 50-year-old Macallan? I don't think the math works out that way. And is it obvious I'm a single malt and Macallan fan? So, there you go. But before we get to the final rankings, a rhetorical question. Why didn't Bond drink JB whiskey? JB, James Bond. Missed opportunity there, I think. Okay, on to the rankings. So we look to the experts for a final score, and what we see is, of course, the single malts clearly win. More surprising, however, is Jack is last. Did not see that coming. What are your thoughts? And more importantly, will I get a downvote from Calvin Dyson for this sacrilege? Leave your comments below. Now, I've got to say, between the Macallan and Belvedere, Bond has pretty darn good taste. If you've been watching this far, you might be interested in some of my other James Bond videos. But more importantly, now to my disclaimers. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye now.
Bye.